The text on December 20th was clear. "This year is just my son's immediate family," I replied. "Have a wonderful time," and booked 2 first-class tickets to Paris for my grandmother and me. When they video called on Christmas Eve, Grandma just sipped her champagne and used AirPlay. The family trust document lit up their television, showing the new trustee. "My name is Leah Martin, and I am 33 years old. On the 20th of December, at precisely 6:17 p.m., my phone vibrated against the cold quartz countertop of my kitchen island. I didn't need to look at it. The specific tinny buzz was one I had assigned to only one person, my mother. I was watching the Seattle rain, a relentless fine mist that blurred the lights of the city into a watercolor of grays and blues. My apartment, 2/3 of the way up a building that promised unobstructed views of the Sound, was silent. I had built my life around this kind of silence. Controlled, sterile, and intentional. I wiped my hands on a towel, picked up the phone. The text message was short, efficient, even. "Christmas this year. We're just inviting your brother's family and his wife and kids." I read it twice, analyzed the word choice. Just a surgical partition. "My son's immediate family," she had written. "Not your brother's." A subtle linguistic demotion. He was the son. I was the corollary, his family, with the 2.5 children and the new, impressive in-laws, a doctor and a lawyer. As I'd been reminded weekly was immediate. Her daughter, was now, apparently, extended. I stood there for a full minute, the phone heavy in my hand. The rain hissed against the glass. I felt the familiar, dull compression in my chest. It wasn't the sharp, hot sting of betrayal. That was for younger women, for people who still carried hope. This was something different. The chronic, low-grade ache of a fact being confirmed. The weariness of a 33-year-old lesson that refused to end. My thumbs moved with practiced precision. I typed 4 words. "Have a wonderful time." No punctuation, no questions, no anger. I did not ask why. I did not point out that I, too, was immediate family. I did not remind her that I was her child. I hit send. The message turned blue, delivered. I placed the phone face down on the counter and went back to the window, watching the ferry slide through the dark water below. I would not cry. I had debugged multi-threaded race conditions in C++ that were more emotionally taxing. This was just a logical error, a bad pointer, a segmentation fault in the family code. The phone rang, startling me. A different ringtone, a warm, analog-sounding bell. Evelyn. I let it ring 3 times, a small ritual to compose my voice, to bleach the ice out of it. "Hey, Grandma." "Leah, dear, I was just pulling the pan out of the oven. Am I catching you in the middle of work?" Her voice was like old paper, thin but textured, and the only source of uncomplicated warmth in my life. "No, just wrapping up. What's baking?" "Gingerbread," she said, and I could hear the smile. "The dark kind, with the extra molasses. Just like you like. Now, I was calling to ask what you were planning to bring for the 25th. Your mother is being vague about the menu, and I want to make sure we don't end up with 3 kinds of green bean casserole again." There it was, the casual, innocent question that landed like a ball-peen hammer on a fractured bone. My mother hadn't told her. Of course she hadn't. Evelyn was my grandmother, but she was her mother-in-law, a logistical nuisance to the grand performance. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass. "You know, Grandma, I haven't even thought about it. I've been so buried in a new project. Tell me about the gingerbread. Did you use the crystallized ginger I sent you?" I kept her on the line for 10 minutes. I steered the conversation, asking about her neighbors, her arthritis, the book she was reading. I made her laugh, a dry, crackling sound that I loved. I painted a vague picture of a holiday I would not be attending, a ghost at a feast I was barred from. I did it to protect her, to shield her from the casual cruelty of her own daughter. I promised to call her back tomorrow. I hung up and the silence of the apartment rushed back in, heavier this time. This was the hollowness. It was no longer painful. Not really. It was just familiar. It was the exhaustion of a lifetime spent on the periphery, 33 years of being the quiet, intense, difficult one, while my brother, with his easy smile and football trophies, soaked up all the light. I was the one who didn't fit the narrative. My successes were weird, nerdy, and unphotogenic. His failures were romanticized as finding himself. I walked over to my laptop, sleek and black on the desk. I opened it. The screen illuminated my face, my real life, my calendar. Sentinel Arc Labs, a block of red tomorrow morning. NDA call project Scythe IP escrow terms. I thought about the terms, the clauses I had personally drafted, hidden deep in the acquisition contract, the intellectual property kill switch, tied to an escrow account that only I and my two co-founders, Maya and Darius, could access. The thing that made the $290 million sale possible. The thing that ensured our employees got 20% of the payout before the venture capitalists saw a dime. The thing that had made 3 of the top partners at a major San Francisco law firm look at me. A 33-year-old woman in a plain black sweater, with a terrifying mixture of respect and fear. My father had insisted I use his financial advisor after the sale. He handles all of our investments. Leah, he's very good. I'd taken the meeting, listened to the man patronize me about mutual funds, and then quietly moved my entire net worth into a blind trust managed by a woman in Zurich, whose name my family had never heard. I clicked off the calendar and, out of some morbid, self-punishing instinct, opened social media, a private family group chat, the one I was clearly still in by administrative oversight. My sister-in-law, the lawyer, had posted a photo, fabric swatches, trying to decide on the tablescape for Christmas Eve, which one feels more classic for the doctor's parents. My uncle replied, "As long as there's enough bourbon, they'll love it. Can't wait to show our new in-laws a proper family Christmas." A proper family Christmas. I looked at the color swatches, burgundy and gold, performative, curated, a stage set for a play I had not been cast in. They weren't just having a holiday, they were impressing an audience. And I, with my quiet intensity and my lack of a photogenic, high-status husband, was bad for the brand. I closed the laptop. The screen went dark, and my reflection stared back at me, pale, tired, but my eyes were clear. "Not my fault," I whispered to the reflection. It wasn't an affirmation, it was a diagnosis. This is their choice, a choice made, no doubt, in a family meeting I wasn't invited to. A choice to prioritize the aesthetics of a party over the inclusion of their own blood. I would not fight it. I would not beg for a seat at a table that was never truly set for me. I opened a drawer in my desk. Beneath a stack of unread security journals, there was a folder. I pulled it out. A flight itinerary, drafted 6 weeks ago, never ticketed. Seattle C to New York, JFK, 2 round-trip, first-class seats, for Grandma Evelyn. She had mentioned in passing, months ago, that she'd always wanted to see the Rockettes at Christmas, that she'd seen a newsreel of it once back in the 1950s, but never had the money. I had found the best seats, booked a suite at the St. Ush Regis overlooking the park, arranged for a private car, and then, a week before the planned trip, her hip had flared up. "Oh, next time, dear," she'd said, her voice small with disappointment. "It's too much. Don't waste the money." The itinerary sat there, a ghost of a kindness, an uncashed check. My professional phone, a hardened, encrypted device, buzzed on the desk. A different number. I picked it up. "Mr. Jensen, good evening. Leah Martin." The voice on the other end was gravelly, professional. "Ms. Martin, good to hear from you. Everything is quiet here. Just confirming the systems check. Is the radiant heating operational in the main lodge?" "Yes, ma'am. Fired it up yesterday, just as you scheduled. The snowplow service is on standby for the main road, and the pantry is stocked per your list. And the generators. Fuel topped off, tested this morning. You're all set, if you decide to come." "Thank you. Mr. Jensen, I'll let you know." I hung up. The ranch. 600 acres in Paradise Valley, Montana, purchased for $6.2 million in cash through a shell corporation. A fortress of pine and glass and quiet, powered by its own systems, with a high-speed fiber line I'd paid to have run 20 miles up the mountain. A place my family did not know existed. A place I went when the noise of their expectations became too loud. I looked from the encrypted phone back to the unpicketed flight to New York. I looked at the family group chat, still glowing on my laptop, the text message from my mother, the exclusion, the performance, the unused ticket for Evelyn, and a new thought, cold and clear and sharp as a diamond, crystallized in my mind. If I am not invited to their Christmas, I will host my own. Not in Montana, not in New York. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I didn't open a travel site. I opened the airline's dedicated app, the one for their highest tier, invitation-only status. Seattle, C to Paris. CDG, departure. December 22nd, return open, passengers 2, cabin first class. The screen displayed the price. It was a number that would have made my father, who still checked the price of gasoline 3 times before filling up, physically ill. I didn't blink. My thumb pressed confirm purchase. The screen refreshed. Your tickets are confirmed. We look forward to welcoming you on board. I picked up my personal phone. I opened a new text message. To Evelyn. My thumbs hovered for a moment, then typed, Grandma, I have an idea. I paused, a small, thin smile touching my lips for the first time all day. It's a little crazy. Paris. I hit send. The rain was still falling, but the gray in the apartment felt different now. It was no longer the color of an old wound. It was the color of a blank slate. The message to Evelyn hung in the digital air. Paris. I had sent it, and I could not pull it back. The decision was made. The roots of it, I realized, were not planted tonight in my Seattle apartment. They were deep, anchoring me in the dry, dusty soil of Spokane, Washington, where I grew up. My childhood home was not a bad place, not in the ways people write books about. It was comfortable. It was safe. It was just a place where the spotlight had a predetermined target, and that target was never me. My older brother, Mark, was the sun. I was a distant, vaguely orbiting moon. He was broad-shouldered, charismatic, and photogenic. He played football. In our part of America, that was currency. The house was a shrine to his achievements. Trophies lined the mantelpiece, heavy gold-plated plastic men frozen in a perpetual stiff arm. Game balls with scores written in silver marker sat in the den. His framed jersey hung in the hallway. These were tangible successes. They were loud. People understood them. My successes were quiet. They happened inside a machine, in lines of glowing text. In 10th grade, I spent 3 solid months writing a predictive algorithm for a state-level computer science competition. It analyzed traffic patterns to optimize emergency vehicle response times. When I started, I barely knew what I was doing. When I finished, I had created something that worked. I won first place. I drove home, clutching the laminated wood plaque. It felt impossibly light compared to Mark's trophies. I walked into the kitchen, where my mother and Mark's girlfriend, Sarah, were looking at a magazine. Mom, I said, my voice too loud. I won the state competition. My mother looked up, her eyes still glazed over from the magazine. Oh, that's good. Leah, she smiled. A quick, automatic stretch of the lips. That's very nice. The smile vanished. She turned back to Sarah, tapping the glossy page. Now, Sarah, we absolutely must decide on the fabric for your prom dress. Do you think the periwinkle is too much? We have to consider the lighting in the ballroom. I stood there for a moment, holding the plaque, the periwinkle. It was very important. I went to my room, put the plaque in my desk drawer, and closed it. When it came time for college, Mark went to Washington State, close enough for weekend visits and tailgate parties. I applied for the farthest, best program I could get into information security at Cal Poly, in California. I got a scholarship, But it didn't cover everything. In the 4 years I was there, my family never once visited. Not for parents' weekend, not to see my dorm, not to help me move in or out. The flight is just so expensive. Leah, my father would say, you know how busy we are with Mark's season. I knew. I learned to pack 2 suitcases, sell my furniture on Craigslist at the end of every spring, and fly home alone, to cover my books and the certifications that my scholarship wouldn't. I got a job at an ATT store in the mall. It was a terrible job. I sold SIM cards and phone cases to angry people, but I was good at it. I was good at the technical side, at fixing the problems the other reps couldn't. 1 month, they put my picture on a poster near the entrance. Employee of the Month Leah Martin. It was cheesy. A laminated poster tacked to a corkboard. I was wearing the awful blue polo shirt, and my smile was awkward, but I was proud. I had earned it. 30 hours a week on top of a full engineering course load. I took a picture of it and sent it to the family group chat. My brother sent back a thumbs-up emoji. My mother didn't reply. My father's text came an hour later. A private message. Don't show off. Leah, it's not becoming. Humility is important. I looked at the text. Then I looked at the poster. Then I thought about the trophies on the mantle back home. I didn't understand the rules. His victories were for public consumption. Mine were showing off. I stopped sending pictures. When I graduated, I didn't take the safe job offer from a defense contractor. I had an idea. It was a small, ambitious idea, a lightweight, heuristic spam filter for enterprise email clients. I called it Sentry. I built a prototype in my tiny San Luis Obispo apartment when I told my parents I was starting a company. Their reaction was a sigh. Leah, stability is so important, my mother said, her voice laced with that familiar, weary disappointment. Your brother has such a good, stable job at the bank. He has a 401k. This computer thing, it's a gamble. Wouldn't you rather just be comfortable? I don't want to be comfortable, I said. Well, you'll learn, my father said, as if I were a child touching a hot stove. They were right about one thing. It was a gamble, and I lost. The first startup burned through my small seed funding in 18 months. My co-founder, a college friend, took a real job 6 months in. I held on. I tried to code, market, and sell all at once. It broke me. The company folded, leaving me with nothing but a worthless LLC and $35,000 in credit card debt I had used to pay for server space. I moved back to Washington, but I couldn't bear to go to Spokane. I landed in Tacoma, in a tiny room I found on Craigslist. It was barely 100 square feet, with a single window that faced a damp, mossy brick wall. I could touch both walls if I stretched out my arms. I got a job doing freelance IT support, debugging other people's broken websites for $50 a pop, just to make the minimum payments on my cards. I was 26 years old. I was a failed founder. I was a disgrace. I told my parents the company was pivoting and that I was consulting. They just nodded, their faces a mask of, I told you so, and changed the subject to Mark's engagement. There was only one person who had believed in Sentry, my grandmother, Evelyn. When I had my first beta, she was the only one in my family who asked to try it. She had an ancient, wheezing laptop, still running an unsupported version of Windows. I spent 3 hours on the phone with her, walking her through the installation, listening to her describe the icons on her screen. She was my entire user base. When the company failed, I didn't tell her, but she knew. Grandmothers always know. I drove to her little house in Spokane one weekend, a failed prodigy seeking sanctuary. I didn't even go to my parents' house. She opened the door, looked at my pale face and the dark circles under my eyes, and just nodded. She didn't say, I'm sorry, or what happened. She said, you look thin. I'll make cocoa. We sat at her kitchen table, the one covered in a faded vinyl tablecloth. She pushed a mug of dark, rich hot chocolate across to me. It was the good kind, the one I had just sent her, made with shaved chocolate, not powder. She sat down, her hands wrapped around her own mug. So, she said, it didn't work. No, I whispered. staring into the mug. It was a complete failure. I lost everything. Dad was right. Evelyn snorted, a sharp, dismissive sound. Failure is the cover charge for ambition. Leah, I looked up. It's the price you pay just to get in the door, she said, her eyes sharp and clear. Most people, they stand outside. They're afraid to pay. They just look through the window, and they spend their whole lives wondering what it's like in there. You paid. Honey, you're inside. Don't you dare leave the line now. That sentence was the steel rod they'd forgotten to put in my spine. I drank the cocoa. I drove back to Tacoma. I started working, my family. Meanwhile, doubled down on their own ambitions. Their ambition was normalcy. It was the perfect, traditional. Proper Christmas. It was their annual performance. Mark was the star. His wife, Sarah, was the supporting actress. And I was stage crew. I learned my role. I learned to fly in on the 24th, smile, and make myself useful. I was the one who washed the good crystal by hand. I was the one who took the coats. I was the one who listened to my uncle's boring stories. Nodding with performative interest, I made myself small and quiet and helpful. I learned to blend into the background, to become the neutral-colored wallpaper against which their holiday could shine. But while I was washing their dishes, I was building my fortress. I kept my tiny, damp room in Tacoma. I worked the IT jobs during the day. At night, I taught myself. I didn't study app development. I went darker. I downloaded virtual machines. I studied reverse engineering. I learned incident response. I tore apart malware, byte by byte, to see how it worked. I learned how hackers thought, how they moved through a system, how they broke things. I didn't sleep. I just learned. On the rare occasions my family asked about my computer job, it was only to measure me. Are you making good money now, Leah? My father would ask. Is it as much as Mark's bonus? I would just smile and say, I'm comfortable, Dad. I learned a very important lesson in those years. Love, I discovered, doesn't have a key performance indicator. You cannot quantify it. You cannot force it. You cannot earn it by being good or smart or successful. It is either given or it is not. But respect is different. Respect is a transaction. And sometimes, the only way to earn it is by proving, unequivocally, that you do not need it. My value, I learned, was not in my presence. It was in my absence. It was in my silence. I looked at the text message I had just sent to Evelyn. Paris. I wasn't just offering her a trip. I was cashing in my chips. I was done paying the cover charge. I was about to buy the club. Sentinel Arc Labs was not born in a startup incubator with whiteboard walls and kombucha on tap. It was born in a rented garage in Tacoma, the kind with a rattling metal door and a concrete floor so cold it seeped through the soles of your shoes. This time, I was not alone. I had learned from Sentry. You cannot build a fortress by yourself. I had Maya, and I had Darius. Maya was law. She had walked away from a junior partnership at a Seattle firm, claiming she was tired of defending the dragons and wanted to build the castle. She was sharp, precise, and saw contracts the way I saw code as a system of instructions that could be exploited or fortified. Darius was research and development. He was a quiet, brilliant man who had spent 5 years in network defense. He didn't just understand systems, he felt them. He could spot a bad actor by the rhythm of their packet requests. I was the architect, the one who built the engine and laid the strategy. Our product was born from my time in the dark. We called it the black box. Companies were developing faster than they could secure themselves, pushing code a dozen times a day in their CI/CD pipelines. They were leaving digital doors wide open, leaked API keys, unsecured credentials in public code repositories, anomalous behaviors in their build chains. We built a tool that acted like a flight recorder for their entire development process. It didn't just scan for known vulnerabilities, it learned the unique behavior of their system. It created a baseline of normal, and the instant the very microsecond a developer or a process acted abnormally, the black box flagged it, isolated it, and sounded the alarm. The first 6 months were brutal. We had a handful of small business clients, beta testers who were paying us pennies. The cash was non-existent. My savings from the IT support jobs evaporated. Then my personal savings. I sold my car, an old sedan, for cash and started taking the bus. My diet became a rotation of ramen packets, the kind that cost 20 cents apiece. Doubt was a physical weight. I would sit in that cold garage, my fingers numb, thinking about my brother's stable 401k. Then the call came. It was 2:45 in the morning on a Tuesday. A mid-sized logistics company, one of our largest clients, which meant they paid us almost nothing. They were on fire. Not a simple breach, but a full-scale assault. A sophisticated attacker was inside their system, moving laterally toward their shipping manifests and payment gateways. Their CISO was panicked. "We're dark," he yelled into the phone. "We can't see him. We can't stop him. And he's encrypting everything." Darius was already on a keyboard. "He's good," Darius murmured, his eyes scanning logs. "He's not using a script. He's thinking." Maya was on the phone with their legal team, getting emergency authorization. I just coded. I found the entry point, a compromised developer credential, just as our thesis predicted. But the attacker was already past it, using a zero-day exploit we'd never seen. We couldn't kick him out, so we built a box around him. For 72 hours, we did not sleep, the three of us, in that garage, fueled by gas station coffee. We manually rerouted their entire network, segment by segment, through our black box prototype. We didn't just watch the attacker. We profiled him. We learned his habits. We anticipated his next move and walled off that part of the system seconds before he arrived. We kept the company running. We held the line. On the third day, the attacker, realizing he was trapped in a labyrinth of our making, simply gave up and disconnected. The system was clean. A week later, the logistics company's chief information security officer flew to Tacoma. He was a tall man in an expensive suit. He stood in our garage, looked at the exposed wiring, the empty ramen cups, and the three of us, who looked like survivors of a plane crash. He didn't say thank you. He just pointed at our prototype. That was a proof of concept. I'm signing a contract. The first-year contract was for $1.2 million. We moved out of the garage and into a real office, a small space with actual heating. We hired our first 3 engineers. The first thing I did, before we even cashed the check, was pull Maya into a room. "I want to structure the cap table," I said. "But I want something non-standard." "What?" she asked. "If we are ever acquired, I want the employees to be paid first. Not us, not the investors, the employees." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's not how this works. Leah." "Make it work," I said. 20% of any sale, off the top, goes into an employee-managed labor trust. Priority shares, ironclad. She smiled. "I'll draft it." We grew. We built a honeypot, a fake system designed to lure attackers. 6 months later, one took the bait. It wasn't a script kiddie. It was a sophisticated group. Darius caught the signature. "This is new," he said, his voice quiet with a terrifying kind of excitement. "They're testing us." That night, Darius reverse-engineered their malware. I wrote the patch to neutralize it, and Maya spent the night drafting a detailed legal complaint, including a forensic analysis of the attack vector, which she delivered to the group's hosting provider and the FBI's cybercrime division by sunrise. We weren't just a product anymore. We were a security operation. Year 2. The infrastructure funds came calling. They saw our client list. They saw our defense record. We took a Series A. The negotiation was brutal. They wanted control. They wanted the core IP transferred to their holding company. I remembered my first failure. My first company. "No," I said, in the big glass boardroom. Maya stepped in. "What we can offer," she said, "is a compromise." The compromise was Appendix 14, a clause I had written myself. It stated that the core intellectual property, the black box algorithm, would be held in a third-party escrow. It could not be transferred, sold, or modified without a unanimous vote from the founders. It effectively gave me a veto. They balked. We threatened to walk. They signed. With my portion of that funding, I did something my family would never understand. I didn't buy a Tesla. I didn't buy a waterfront condo. I created a new blind trust, and through it, I quietly purchased 600 acres of land in Paradise Valley, Montana, for $6.2 million. It was a ranch, with a simple lodge, its own well, solar, and a generator. It was my fortress, a place I could disappear. My name was on no deed. My family thought I was still just a consultant, making good money. Year 4. We achieved FedRAMP moderate certification. It was a grueling, expensive process, but it opened the door. We could now sell to the United States government. The acquisition offer came 6 months later. A tech titan, the ones who buy everything, they flew us to their campus. We sat in a room that was probably worth more than our entire Series A. Their lead negotiator started the offer. Maya just smiled. "Before we discuss price," she said, "I want to make sure you've all had a chance to read Appendix 14 of our investor agreement." The color drained from the negotiator's face. He had not. The final deal was signed 3 weeks later, $290 million. The first wire transfer from the acquisition account was not to the investors. It was for $58 million, or 20%. Moved directly into the Sentinel Arc Employee Trust Fund. It made our first engineers, our office manager, our sales team, all of them millionaires. I resigned from the board of directors the day the deal closed. I kept only one role, a paid advisory seat. I had my ranch, I had my exit, I had my freedom, and I had done it all from the shadows. While my family was busy arguing over who would bring the best wine to impress the in-laws, the text message, "Have a wonderful time," was still marked delivered. It had not been read. My mother, I knew, was letting it sit. She was letting me sit. She was waiting for the inevitable follow-up, the why the hurt feelings. The call where I would be emotional and she would be logical and calming, explaining the difficult social logistics of the holiday season. I denied her the opportunity. I went about my evening. I made a cup of tea. I read 3 technical briefs on new encryption vulnerabilities. I did not check my phone again. The follow-up text came, as I knew it would. The next morning, it was a strategic, preemptive strike, designed to manage my reaction. "Leah, I hope you understand. It's just that it would be less awkward for Mark to host everyone with his new in-laws. The doctor and the lawyer, it's a lot of pressure on Sarah. We wanted to make it easier for them. Less awkward." I stared at the words. I was not family. I was an awkward variable, a social logistic that was too complicated to solve. This I could work with. This was not an emotional appeal. It was a business decision, and I understood business. I opened my laptop. My aunt, the one who was always organizing the family tree on a shared cloud drive, was famously bad with digital security. I had helped her set up her account years ago. I still had the recovery credentials. It took me less than 30 seconds to access the shared family drive. There it was, a folder labeled Christmas 2023. Inside, a document. Guest list, final. I clicked it. It was a spreadsheet, a list of names, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, and there, near the top, was my name, Leah Martin, and next to it, in red, strike through text, was a comment from my mother, dated 3 days ago. Discussed in family meeting, will manage. A family meeting, one I had not been invited to. A meeting where I was an agenda item to be managed. I was not a person. I was a problem. I closed the document. I did not change anything. I did not leave a digital footprint. I logged out. I felt a strange, cold calm. The last bit of fog. The lingering, childish hope that this was all just a mistake, evaporated. This was an execution, planned and ratified by committee. I did not respond to my mother's text. Instead, I did a different kind of research. I found the resort my brother and sister-in-law were hosting at. It was an exclusive, showy place in the mountains, the kind with valet parking for skis. I found the event package they had likely booked. I pulled a high-resolution satellite image of the main lodge from a public server. I looked at the sprawling deck, the huge outdoor fireplace, the perfectly manicured grounds. "Nice," I said to the empty room. "But not for me." My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Evelyn. Her text was simple. "Your mother told me the plan. If you're sad, you come over here. I've got that dark gingerbread." I looked at the message, and the ice around my heart cracked. Just a little. She didn't argue. She didn't make excuses for my mother. She just offered sanctuary. She offered cake, I typed back, my fingers moving quickly now. "Grandma, I have a plan. It's not cake. It's better. How is your hip feeling?" Her reply was almost instantaneous. "Old, but it still travels. What are you up to, child?" "I'll call you in an hour," I wrote. "Pack a bag." Then, the operation began. I was no longer Leah Martin, the excluded daughter. I was Leah Martin, the architect. My objective was not to host a better Christmas. My objective was to create a memory so profound, so perfect, that the snub from my family would become what it truly was irrelevant. First, the venue. I opened the browser, Hôtel de Crillon, Paris. I had stayed there once for a business meeting. It was not just a hotel. It was a statement. It overlooked the Place de la Concorde. I booked the Bernstein suite, a corner room with balconies and a view of the Eiffel Tower. I paid for it with the card from my private trust, the one my family's financial advisor didn't know existed. Next, the main event, Christmas Eve. While they would be managing the awkwardness of their new in-laws, I would be managing a different kind of detail. I called the hotel's concierge directly. "I need a private dining room for the evening of the 24th. For two? Yes, just two. I want it to have the best view of the square, and I want flowers, peonies. If you can find them in winter, they're her favorite." I confirmed the booking. I selected the menu, a classic French réveillon, and paid for it in advance. Then, the memory. My grandmother wasn't a materialist. She was a woman of stories, of moments. I needed to honor that. I hired a small, discreet Parisian film crew, a two-person team I found through an art house production company. I sent them an email with clear instructions. "This is not an influencer video. This is a tribute. You are to be invisible. You are capturing the story of an 80-year-old woman seeing Paris for the first time. It is for her. It is for memory." I delved deeper. I remembered a story she told me, about a postcard she'd had on her mirror for 40 years. It was a painting from the Musée d'Orsay, a specific one, a minor impressionist piece, but it was the one she loved. I contacted the museum's curatorial office. I explained the situation. I made a significant donation to their arts education fund. In return, they agreed to a private, after-hours tour for Madame Evelyn on the 23rd. They would open the gallery she loved, just for her. No crowds, just her and the painting. The plan was solid, but it needed a personal touch. I went into my closet, to a garment bag in the back. Inside was my grandmother's old coat, a beautiful classic wool coat from the 1960s. She had given it to me, but it was too small. I had kept it, meaning to have it restored. I took it to the best tailor in Seattle. "I need this relined," I said, "and I need a custom tag sewn into the inside, over the heart." The tailor looked at me. "What should the tag say?" "Evelyn Delaney Passage à Paris." He nodded, a small, knowing smile. "It will be ready." There were two final, practical problems. First, Evelyn's comfort. My apartment in Seattle was my fortress. But it wasn't a home for her. I went to my desk, opened the safe, and took out a small, velvet box. Inside was a single, high-security key. The key to the penthouse I had bought, the one 2 floors above my own, which I kept empty. As a guest house and a quiet place to think, it was her escape route. A place in the city she could go, anytime, no questions asked, if she ever needed to be away from the noise of the family. I put the box in my bag. Second, communication. I would not have my grandmother fumbling with international phone plans. I went to the store and bought 2 brand new, top-of-the-line smartphones. I spent an hour configuring them. I set mine up with my credentials. For hers. I simplified the interface. I removed every app except Photos, Weather, and a single, large button on the home screen. A picture of my face. I programmed it. One touch, I would tell her. That's all you have to do to call me, anywhere in the world. I activated an unlimited global roaming plan on both devices. My last act of preparation was an email. I compiled the entire itinerary flights, hotel, tour times, dinner reservations. I attached her medical information and her preferred pharmacy. I sent it to her primary care physician in Spokane. Subject: medical clearance for international travel. E. Delaney. I laid out the plan. The minimal walking required. The comfort and care I had arranged. I asked him to confirm her prescriptions and to clear her for travel. I leaned back. My calendar was full. My finances were deployed. My logistics were locked. I thought about the family meeting. The red strike-through on my name. The text about awkwardness. I would not send a single angry text. I would not make a single phone call. I would not argue, or defend, or ask for an apology. I would just create a memory so bright and so beautiful that it would cast their petty, curated Christmas into a permanent shadow. My silence would be louder than any argument I could ever make. I drove to Spokane in a rented black sedan, the kind that blends in. I didn't go to my parents' house. I went straight to Evelyn's. She was waiting on the porch, wearing her old wool coat and carrying a small tapestry handbag with a worn brass clasp. It was the same bag she had carried to my high school graduation. "You're late, child," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I know, Grandma. Traffic." "There's no traffic in Spokane," she sniffed, but she let me take her arm and lead her to the car. Seattle-Tacoma International Airport on December 22nd was a frantic constellation of lights and stress. People ran with overstuffed bags, yelling at children, their faces tight with the anxiety of holiday travel. We bypassed all of it. I guided Evelyn to the dedicated first-class check-in. There was no line. A woman in a sharp uniform smiled at us. "Good evening. Where are we flying tonight?" "Paris," I said, placing our passports on the counter. The woman looked at our tickets, then at Evelyn, who was standing there clutching her old handbag. The woman's professional smile softened into something genuine. "Madame," she said to Evelyn, "the lounge is just past security. Let me get you a wheelchair escort so you don't have to walk." "Oh, I can walk," Evelyn started. "I insist," the woman said kindly. "It's part of the service." On the plane, the pod was larger than my first Tacoma apartment. Evelyn ran her hand over the smooth, curved shell. A flight attendant appeared instantly, offering champagne. Evelyn, who usually only drank a small sherry at Christmas, took the glass. She settled into the seat, which was already unfolding into a lie-flat bed. She looked over the partition at me, her face a mixture of awe and profound suspicion. "Leah, are you sure about this? This is too much. What did this cost?" I leaned across the aisle. "Grandma, it doesn't matter what it cost. It's just money. I'm just taking you to the place you always dreamed of going, the place you had on that postcard." Her eyes misted, just for a second. "The Monet," she whispered. She took a sip of champagne. "Well, all right then." We landed at Charles de Gaulle at dawn. The air was cold and sharp. As we exited the private customs line, a man in a dark suit was waiting. He was not holding a generic Martin sign. He was holding a polished wooden board, elegantly lettered, "Madame Evelyn." Evelyn saw it and put her hand to her chest. She had never, in her entire life, been Madame Evelyn. She had been Evie, or Mrs. Delaney, or Mom, or Grandma. The man bowed slightly, took her small bag, and led us to a black Mercedes. The Hotel de Crillon was quiet. The marble lobby smelled faintly of lilies and old-world wax. They did not ask us to wait at a counter. The manager greeted us at the door. "Ms. Martin, Madame Delaney, welcome. Your suite is ready." We rode a velvet-lined elevator. He opened the double doors to the Bernstein suite, and the first thing we saw was the light. It was a pale Parisian morning light, flooding in through 3 sets of floor-to-ceiling French doors, and beyond them, the view, the Place de la Concorde, sprawling below, the obelisk, the fountains, and in the distance, framed perfectly between 2 buildings, the Eiffel Tower. Evelyn walked, as if in a trance, past the peonies I had ordered, which sat on a marble fireplace. She walked past the sitting room, past the king-size bed. She went straight to the center balcony, opened the doors, and stepped out. The city was waking up. The sound of traffic was a distant, civilized hum. She placed her weathered hands on the cold stone balustrade. She just looked. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, a single, satisfied sigh. "Well," she said, "to the city. Finally." That afternoon, after she had napped on sheets she claimed were made of clouds, we walked. I let her set the pace. We went down to the river and walked slowly across the Pont Alexandre III. The bridge was absurdly ornate, all gold statues and Belle Époque lamps. She stopped in the middle, leaning on the railing to look at the Seine. "You know," she said, not looking at me, "when I was 22, I worked at a bakery in Spokane. I woke up at 4 every morning. I saved every tip, every single one. I had a jar, and I put a picture of this city on it." She laughed, a dry, small sound. "I wanted to come here. I saved for 2 years. I had almost enough for the boat ticket, not a plane, a boat." "What happened?" I asked. "Oh," she said, waving a hand. "Life. Your grandfather's father got sick. The farm needed help. The money went to a tractor engine, and just like that, it was gone. You don't get second chances at 22. I took her arm. "Sometimes you just get them at 80. I took her shopping, not to the big, intimidating flagship stores on the Champs-Élysées. I took her to a small, quiet boutique in the Marais I knew. The owner, a chic woman in her 60s, saw Evelyn and immediately understood. She didn't try to sell her something trendy. She brought out a simple, beautiful dress of soft, gray wool and a matching cashmere wrap. Evelyn tried it on. It was perfect, except the shoulder was a little stiff. The owner called over a tailor, who was working in the back. He took one look, nodded, and returned in 10 minutes. The seam on the shoulder adjusted perfectly, sitting warmly on her frame. Evelyn looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't look like a tourist. She looked like she belonged. That evening, the 23rd, was for the museum. The main halls of the Musée d'Orsay were dark and silent. A single curator met us at a side entrance. We walked over the glass floor, our footsteps echoing in the vast, empty train station. He led us up to the Impressionist gallery. It was roped off, but he unhooked the velvet rope for us. "Please," he said, "take your time." Evelyn found it instantly. The postcard, the painting she had looked at for 40 years. It was a simple Monet, a quiet landscape, not one of his famous ones. She walked right up to it, closer than any guard would normally allow. She just stared at it, her head tilted. The cameraman I had hired, a young man who looked more like a student, was 20 feet away, his camera low. He wasn't filming Evelyn. He was filming the painting and then panning slowly to her face, capturing the reflection of the canvas in her eyes. She reached out, her finger trembling, and grazed the edge of the heavy gold frame. A single tear traced the line down her cheek. She wasn't sad. It was the tears of a debt being paid. Later, we had dinner, not at the Grand Hotel, but at a tiny bistro on a side street, the kind with checkered tablecloths and a gruff, friendly owner. We ate coq au vin and drank a simple, robust red wine. When the owner heard our story, that it was Evelyn's first ever night in Paris, on Christmas Eve, he brought over 2 small glasses of Calvados, the apple brandy, on the house. "To Noël, madame," he said, raising his own glass from behind the bar. "To Paris." As we sat there, Evelyn laughing, her face flushed with the wine and the warmth. I took out the new phone. I opened the camera. I took a short video. It was just 30 seconds. Just her, raising her glass, the lights of the bistro sparkling behind her. I looked at the clip. It was perfect. It was the truth. I opened my messaging app. I went to the family group chat, the one filled with talk of table settings and doctor-in-laws. I attached the video. I thought about the caption for a long time. I could have said nothing. I could have said, "Merry Christmas from Paris." But I didn't. I typed one sentence. "Here's to the only one who believed in me before I believed in myself." I hit send. I put my phone in my pocket. It took less than 5 minutes. My phone, the one in my pocket, began to vibrate. Not once. It began to pulse. A relentless, frantic buzzing. Messages, texts, missed calls. I ignored them. "What's all that, dear?" Evelyn asked, finishing her brandy. I pulled out the phone. The lock screen was a cascade of notifications. My mother, my father, my brother, my aunts. "Where are you? What is this? You took Grandma to Paris. Call me right now. Why would you do this?" My cousin, the one who lived on social media, had screenshotted the video and posted it to his public Instagram story. The match had been lit. The fire was spreading. I looked at the chaos on my screen. Then I looked at Evelyn, who was signaling for the check. I silenced the phone. "It's nothing, Grandma," I said. "Just work." I showed her the one-touch call button I had made for her. "This is your new phone. If you need me, you just press my face." She looked at the phone, then at my buzzing, frantic device. "They're bored, Leah," she said, shrugging on her new coat, the one with the hidden label. "They've got nothing better to do. Pay the man. We have a schedule to keep." The walk back to the hotel was quiet. The bistro's warmth faded, replaced by the crisp, cold air of the Paris night. Evelyn's arm was linked through mine. She didn't ask about the phone, and I didn't offer an explanation. Inside the suite, the soft lighting and the view of the illuminated city felt like a sanctuary. But the phone on the table was a blinking grenade. I sat on the sofa. Evelyn went to the balcony, looking at the city. "It's beautiful at night," she said, her voice calm. "All those lights." I picked up the phone. 22 missed calls, 47 text messages. I opened the first one. My mother. "You need to call me immediately. This is not funny. Leah." I pressed the call button. She picked up before the first ring was finished. "What do you think you are doing?" Her voice was not worried. It was sharp, cold, and vibrating with rage. "Good evening, Mother. I'm just getting back to the hotel." "Don't you good evening me. You took your grandmother out of the country without telling anyone. Are you doing this just to spite me? To make us look bad?" I looked over at Evelyn, who was still peacefully watching the traffic circle the obelisk. I turned back, lowering my voice. "I'm with the person who invited me. Mom, you were very clear about your guest list. I just made other plans." "You," she sputtered. I heard my father's voice in the background. "Give me the phone, Carol." His voice boomed onto the line. "Leah, what is this Christmas is for family? It's for being together. You don't just run off to Europe with your grandmother." Being together doesn't start by uninviting someone over a text message. "Dad?" "That was a misunderstanding," he yelled. "Your mother was just trying to manage. The in-laws. It's complicated." "It didn't seem complicated to me," I said, my voice flat and cold. The guest list was very clear. My name had a red line through it. "We'll manage." You managed it. Now I'm managing my own holiday. There was a stunned silence on the other end. He hadn't known I'd seen it. "How did you—" "That's not the point. The point is, you are being divisive and cruel, and you are upsetting your grandmother." "She looks fine to me," I said. "She's on the balcony, enjoying the view of the Place de la Concorde. But thank you for your concern. I have to go." "You will not hang up on me." I pressed the red icon. I ended the call. The silence that followed was heavy. My phone immediately buzzed again. My mother. I declined the call. It buzzed again. A text message. From a number I recognized but rarely used. My sister-in-law. Sarah, the lawyer. Her text was different. Leah, I had no idea you were this wealthy. My parents are asking questions. This is very awkward. I stared at the message. This was the real problem. Not my grandmother's happiness, not the fractured family. The performance had been disrupted. The new in-laws, the doctor and the lawyer, were confused. The narrative of the humble, successful son and the difficult spinster daughter was collapsing. I typed a reply. You didn't need to know. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb. A new message slipped through the filter. My brother, Mark. It wasn't text. It was a picture. His 2 children, a boy and a girl, bundled in snowsuits, building a lopsided snowman. They were cute kids. The caption read, They miss their Aunt Leah. They don't understand why you're not coming. The guilt, the final predictable weapon, the one they always used, deploying the children as a shield. I looked at the photo. Then I looked at Evelyn, who had come inside and was pouring herself a small glass of water. I took a photo. Just a simple, candid shot. Evelyn, in the beautiful hotel suite, with the lights of Paris twinkling behind her. She was smiling, a small, contented smile. I sent the photo back to my brother. No text, no caption. Just her smile, countering his. My phone buzzed again. My mother. She had found a new angle. Leah, you don't understand. Our house is small. We're trying to host Sarah's entire family. It was just a matter of space. It was just too difficult to arrange. Too difficult. Too small. I went to my laptop. I logged back into my aunt's cloud drive. I found the folder for the resort. I found the catering contract. It included a photo of the private family room they had booked for the Christmas Eve dinner. It was a sprawling, rustic hall with vaulted ceilings, a stone fireplace, and seating for 50. I took a screenshot. I texted it to my mother. Looks like plenty of room to me. This time, the silence was longer. Then, a new message. From my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. Leah, dear, I need to be honest with you. They had a meeting. Your mother and father, they said you've become difficult to talk to, that you're intense, and they didn't want to upset the new in-laws dynamic. They said you wouldn't fit in with the happy mood. I read the text, and the last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The final, cold, hard truth. It was never about the space. It was never about the money, or the difficulty, or the logistics. It was about hierarchy. It was a pecking order. I was the family's registered failure, the weird, quiet one. And when the new, high-status in-laws arrived, I was the one who had to be moved to the children's table and then out of the room entirely. Lest my intensity spoil the happy mood, I realized, with a chilling clarity, that my success was actually the problem. As long as I was the struggling, quiet consultant, I was manageable. But the woman who had sold a company, the woman who had disappeared and reappeared with resources that Leah was a threat to the established order, she had to be managed. She had to be put back in her place. Evelyn walked over and sat down in the armchair across from me. She had heard my side of the conversation. She had seen the expression on my face. She reached out and put her small, wrinkled hand over mine, stilling my fingers, which were already typing an angry reply to my aunt. Leah, she said, her voice firm, but kind. Stop explaining. Stop defending. You've been explaining yourself to them your whole life, and they have never, not once, bothered to listen. She squeezed my hand. You're here. I'm here. This is real. That is just noise. Let them talk. You and I. We have a schedule. Now, live. I took a deep breath. I let it out. I turned the phone over, face down on the table. She was right. I went to my laptop to check on the details for Christmas Eve. An email was waiting in my secure inbox, the one I used for legal and financial matters. It was not from my family. It was from Mr. Harrison, the advisor for the Delaney Family Trust, the trust my grandfather had set up, and which Evelyn was the sole remaining trustee for. The email was flagged, urgent. Ms. Martin, I am contacting you at your grandmother's request. We spoke this afternoon. She has decided to make a significant update to the trust's articles, specifically regarding the line of succession for her trusteeship. She has named you as the sole successor trustee and future executor. This is a substantial change from the previous documents, which listed your father and your uncle. She was very specific about the changes. She also wants to restructure the trust's charitable directives. She requested I contact you to facilitate this. She mentioned you were in Paris. I can arrange for a notary and legal counsel to meet you there tomorrow. If you are in agreement, please advise. I read the email twice. I looked up at Evelyn. She was watching me, her eyes sharp. She knew. Grandma, are you sure? It's my money. Leah, she said, simply. Well, it was your grandfather's, and his father's. It was meant to build things. It was meant to help. It was not meant to be a slush fund for impressing doctors and lawyers. This will be a war, I said. It's always been a war, child, she said. You've just been the only one unarmed, now, about this money. It's for helping people. People like you. People who pay the cover charge. It's time to help the people who are still standing in line. Do you agree or not? I nodded slowly. I agree. Good. My personal phone, the one I had silenced, lit up with a new kind of notification, a group video call. My mother was summoning the troops. I let it ring. Aren't you going to answer? Evelyn asked. What's the point? It's just more noise. Answer it, she said, a new unsteely tone in her voice. It's time, but we'll do it on my terms. I tapped the accept button, the screen filled with their faces, all crowded onto a sofa in the mountain resort. My mother, my father, my brother, their faces were stormy. Leah, my mother began, her voice high. We need to talk about this whole thing. This misunderstanding needs to be cleared up, right now. I just looked at her. Before I could reply, Evelyn leaned into the frame. She was smiling, a polite, distant, hostess smile. Carol, dear, she said, her voice as smooth as glass. What a surprise. We were just getting ready for bed. My mother's face froze. Mom, Leah, what have you done? Leah has done me the kindness of an invitation, Evelyn said, which is more than I can say for some. Now, you want to clear things up? Wonderful. We'll be having dinner tomorrow night, Christmas Eve, a private room. You all know where we are. Come if you want, or don't. She reached out and, with one perfectly manicured finger, ended the call. The private salon at the Hôtel de Crillon was a theater set for a final act. The room was long and narrow, dominated by a dark mahogany table that gleamed under the low, flickering light of a dozen thick candles. The air smelled of old wax and the sharp, impossible scent of winter peonies, which were arranged in low crystal vases. In the far corner, a string quartet played a quiet, complex arrangement of The Christmas Song. Through the tall French windows, the Place de la Concorde glittered, a universe of light away from the world we had left. At the end of the room, above a marble fireplace, a large, dark screen was mounted. It was currently quiescent, displaying only 5 elegantly scripted words, Evelyn à Paris. Evelyn sat at the head of the table, her spine straight. She was wearing the new gray wool dress, and she looked less like a grandmother from Spokane and more like the matriarch of an empire. I sat to her right. The cameraman and his assistant were in the corner, next to the musicians, indistinguishable, their equipment small and dark. A sommelier, wearing a silver taste-fin, poured a small measure of champagne into Evelyn's glass. She raised it, her hand perfectly steady. She did not look at me. She looked down the length of the empty table, as if addressing a full board of directors. Leah, she said, her voice clear and resonant in the quiet room, to a Christmas where no one is forced to feel small. She took a sip. I raised my own glass. To Evelyn, I said, I nodded to the hotel attendant who stood discreetly by the door. The lights in the room dimmed further, leaving only the candles and the glow of the city. The string quartet softened, and a new sound emerged from the hidden speakers, a subtle, cinematic score. The screen came to life. The video tribute was not what my family thought it was. The videographer had skillfully woven the past into the present. It began with the old, digitized photographs I had given him, grainy images from the 1970s and 80s my grandfather, tall and thin, my mother as a teenager, defiant and bright. Then, it shifted to a series of Christmases from the 1990s. The camera loved my brother. Mark, beaming, holding up a new football. Mark, standing by the fireplace, surrounded by gifts. Mark, at the head of the table, carving a turkey. And in the background of 3 different shots, I had found myself, a ghost at the feast. In one, I was just a blur of a brown sweater, visible over my father's shoulder, my hands in the kitchen sink, washing dishes. In another, I was sitting alone on the bottom stair, watching the family open presents, my face half hidden. The music swelled, and the screen cut to black. A single word faded in, white on black Himalaya. The score changed, the screen filled with color, sharp and vibrant. It was Evelyn, stepping onto the hotel balcony for the first time, her hands gripping the cold stone balustrade. It was Evelyn, her face 3 inches from the Monet at the Orsay, her eyes wet with the recognition of a 40-year-old dream. It was Evelyn, her head thrown back, laughing in the bistro, her face flushed with wine and the warmth of the room. The cameraman had caught the moment, panning from her joyous face to the Eiffel Tower as it exploded in its hourly cascade of light. Evelyn watched herself, her hand pressed against her lips. When the bistro scene played, she let out a small, sharp laugh of pure delight. "Ah," she whispered, to the screen. "There I am, finally." The video ended with a long, slow shot of the Seine at dawn, the water like polished steel. As the screen faded to black, I reached for Evelyn's hand under the table. Her skin was like paper, but her grip was like a vice. A single, muffled flash, nearly invisible, illuminated our joined hands. The cameraman had his shot. The string quartet began to play again. A waiter stepped forward to present the first course, and my phone, placed deliberately on the table beside my plate, lit up and began to vibrate. It was not a text. It was an incoming group video call. My mother. Evelyn looked at the buzzing phone, then at me. A small, satisfied smile touched the corners of her mouth. "Right on schedule," she said. I tapped the green button. I propped the phone against the heavy silver centerpiece. Their faces flooded the small screen, a chaotic jumble of anger and confusion. My mother was front and center, her face pale and pinched. My father loomed over her shoulder, his expression thunderous. On a sofa behind them, I saw my brother and Sarah, his lawyer wife. I could even see my aunt and uncle, drawn into the drama. They were crowded together in the rustic, expensive lodge in Washington, the great stone fireplace roaring behind them, their perfect Christmas interrupted. "Leah," my mother began, her voice high and tinny through the phone's speaker, "what is the meaning of this, that story? Your cousin saw it. He sent it to everyone. Everyone is calling. What have you done?" They had seen the social media fallout. They had not seen the tribute. "Merry Christmas, Mother," I said, my voice perfectly level. "We were just sitting down to dinner." "Don't you Merry Christmas me," she shrieked. "You are trying to humiliate this family. You take my mother." "Carol," Evelyn's voice was not loud. It was low, cold, and absolute. It cut through my mother's rising panic like a surgeon's blade. Everyone, 3,000 miles away, fell silent. "You wanted to clear up the misunderstanding," Evelyn said, leaning into the phone's view. "We are clearing it up. Now, watch." She nodded to the hotel attendant. "Monsieur, if you please." The airplay. The attendant tapped a small tablet. My phone's screen flickered, and then its image was mirrored onto the giant screen above the fireplace. At the same time, I shared my screen with the group video call. My brother's face went blank. What is this? What is she doing? The screen in our Paris salon and the screen in their hands in Washington now showed the exact same thing. It was not a video, it was a clean digital document, a PDF. The title was at the top, in stark, unforgiving Times New Roman. First Amendment to the Evelyn Thomas Delaney Family Trust. I heard a sharp intake of breath. It was Sarah, the lawyer. She knew what this was. As the sole living trustee, Evelyn said, her voice as calm as a frozen lake, I have instructed my counsel to make some significant updates. They were ratified and filed this morning. Leah, if you would. I scrolled to the first item. My voice was flat, the voice I used to use when reading technical specifications. Item 1, I said, the creation of the Delaney Grandchildren's Scholarship for Technology. This scholarship will disperse $500,000 annually, in perpetuity, to be awarded to first-generation female students in computer science and engineering, with priority given to applicants from the state of Washington. My father's face was turning a dangerous shade of red. Evelyn, you can't. The trust. That's our... I can, Evelyn said. It's done. Item 2. Leah. I scrolled again. Item 2. All real estate assets currently held by the trust in King County, Washington. I paused. My father looked confused. My mother was lost. But Sarah, the lawyer, closed her eyes. She knew the county records. Specifically, the property at Four Seasons Private Residences, Seattle, Unit 28B, will be immediately transferred, title and all, to the newly formed Delaney Pathways Foundation. What foundation? My brother asked, his voice weak. A nonprofit foundation, I said, dedicated to funding STEM education for underserved middle school girls. The foundation will be governed by a board, with myself, Leah Martin, serving as the non-salaried executive director, with sole and exclusive voting rights. My mother's eyes went wide. But that's your apartment. No, I said. It's the penthouse I keep for guests. It's now the foundation's primary asset and headquarters. This is manipulation, my father roared, finding his voice. This is insane. We will contest this. This is elder abuse. Leah, you? Item 3. Evelyn's voice was so cold, it could have cracked glass. I scrolled to the last clause. This was Maya's contribution. My Sentinel ARC lawyer had drafted it on a 3-hour notice, and it was a work of art. Item 3, I read. The forfeiture clause. In the event that any listed beneficiary of the original trust or their spouse, I made eye contact with Sarah's frozen face on the screen, engages in litigation, public disparagement, slander, or any form of public attack, whether verbal, written, or by proxy, against the acting successor trustee, all their future disbursals and claims upon the trust, in their entirety, will be immediately and irrevocably forfeited. Those forfeited funds will be transferred, in full, to the endowment of the California Polytechnic State University. I smiled, a thin, cold smile. No negotiation. The lodge in Washington was silent. The only sound was the crackle of their enormous, performative fireplace. My father's mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. Sarah was staring at the screen, her legal mind frantically running calculations, processing the brutal, airtight finality of the trap. They couldn't sue. They couldn't slander. They couldn't even complain to their friends without risking everything. Evelyn picked up her wine glass. And of course, the amendment designating Leah Martin as that successor trustee. All signed, witnessed, and notarized this morning. Merry Christmas, everyone. She nodded to me. I ended the call. The string quartet began to play again. The waiter stepped forward. Madame, Monsieur, your first course, the waiter, with movements as silent as the snow that wasn't falling, placed the first course in front of us, a perfect, sculpted disc of foie gras torchon, with a fig reduction and toasted brioche. The string quartet had seamlessly transitioned into a complex classical piece. The phone, dark on the white tablecloth, lit up again. Another group video call. "They are persistent," Evelyn noted, picking up her fork. "They're wounded," I said. "They've just lost control of the narrative. And the bank." "No," she corrected, taking a small bite. "They've just been handed the bill for their own choices. Answer it. But do not raise your voice. The person who is calm is the person who is winning." I accepted the call. The image resolved. The same faces, the same room, but the dynamic had shattered. The anger was gone, replaced by a hollow, ringing shock. Sarah, the lawyer, was whispering frantically into my brother's ear. My father just looked old. My mother was the first to speak, her voice trembling, not with rage, but with a desperate, failed attempt at matriarchal authority. "Leah, what is this, a scholarship? A foundation, that apartment. That's a family asset. You can't just, you don't even have a family of your own. You don't understand what it means to build something for your children." It was the oldest, deepest cut, the one they had always used, that I was incomplete, a spinster, a childless, career-obsessed anomaly. "I have a life of my own. Mother," I said, my voice perfectly even. "A life I built while I was being told to be smaller, quieter, and more helpful. A life none of you ever bothered to ask a single question about. This is the result of that life." My father pushed into the frame, his face pale. This is a mistake. Evelyn, Leah has poisoned you. She's manipulating you. No one meant to exclude her. It was a space issue, a misunderstanding. We can fix this." A new voice crackled from the background of their room. My Aunt Carol. "That's not true. David." "Carol," my mother snapped. "You be quiet. This is a private family matter." "I am family," my aunt said, her voice rising, shaky with either guilt or a newfound courage. "And I was in the meeting. I was right there. It's not a misunderstanding. I heard you. You said, 'Leah will just make it intense.' You said, 'It's easier if she's not here.' You struck her name off the list with a pen. David, I watched you do it." A dead, heavy silence fell over the call. My father stared, speechless. My aunt had just thrown the grenade. My brother, Mark, finally spoke, trying to reclaim the logic. It wasn't malicious. We wanted the party to be tidy. The in-laws, the kids. It was just simpler. It was a logistical choice." Evelyn, who had been quietly eating her first course, set down her fork. She leaned toward the phone, her eyes magnified with a cold, analytical brilliance. "Tidy, Mark," she asked, her voice soft. "Or presentable?" Mark flinched. Sarah, the lawyer, stepped forward, her face a mask of professional control. She was no longer a daughter-in-law. She was counsel for the defense. "Okay, that's enough. This is highly irregular. This is borderline coercion. You cannot just ambush us with legal documents on Christmas Eve. You're turning a holiday into a deposition. You should have gone through counsel. This isn't a trial." Evelyn smiled. It was the thinnest, sharpest smile I had ever seen. "Oh, but my dear, you're mistaken. I'm not the one who turned this into a trial. You all did that. 3 days ago, in that family meeting. You sat as judge and jury. You found my granddaughter guilty of being difficult and intense. You sentenced her to exclusion." She leaned closer. "I'm not holding a trial. I'm just reading the minutes of the meeting back to you. It seems you just don't like hearing the verdict when it's not in your favor." She picked up her water glass, took a sip, and continued. "You all talk about what you know. You talk about family. Let me tell you what I know. 3 years ago, my furnace broke. It was January. The temperature in my house was 40 degrees. I called your father, David. He said he'd look into a repairman's schedule when he had a moment. My father's face was white. I called you. Mark, she said, her gaze pinning my brother to the sofa. You said you'd see if your bank had any special loan programs for seniors. I was freezing for 2 days, wearing my coat indoors. Now, Mom, my father started. That's an exaggeration. I was there, Evelyn snapped, silencing him. And then Leah called. Just to check in. I tried to lie, but my teeth were chattering. She was in Tacoma, a 4-hour drive. It was snowing. She said, "Don't move, Grandma." She arrived at my house at 10 o'clock at night. She had just been paid for a small consulting gig. She had exactly $54 in her checking account. She gave 50 of it, in cash, to the emergency heating repairman she had called from the road. She sat with me until the heat came back on at midnight, and then she drove 4 hours back to Tacoma because she had to work the next morning. She ate ramen noodles for 2 weeks to make up for that $50. She never told any of you. She never posted about it. She never asked for a single word of thanks. The silence on the call was absolute. Do you want to know what else I know? Evelyn continued, relentless. I know that when the First Presbyterian Church downtown, the one your mother pretends to love, needed a new server system for their food bank, a donation of $10,000 appeared from an anonymous donor. I only know who it was because I volunteer there, and I saw the car that dropped off the hardware late at night. I recognized the license plate. It was Leah's rental. She didn't want a plaque. She didn't even want a tax receipt. She just wanted the hungry to get fed. My mother's face crumpled. It was the first genuine, unscripted emotion I had seen from her in years. I didn't know, she whispered. She never said any of that. I told you, I said, my voice quiet, cutting through the silence. I told you the furnace broke. I told you about my work projects. You were busy. I looked right at her. You were busy arranging things to look nice. Mom, it's very hard to hear the truth when you're that focused on the table space. My father put his hand on her shoulder. He looked at the screen, at me, at Evelyn. He saw the game was over. He tried for a truce. This is all just... It's all in the past. It's Christmas. Let's just stop. Okay, stop. Leah, Evelyn, come home. We'll fly you back. We'll fix this. We'll go back to how it was. This was it. The final, desperate plea for reset. The desire to rewind the tape, to put the genie back in the bottle, to pretend the red line was never drawn. No, Dad, I said. He looked confused. No, you don't get it. You're still not listening. Back to how it was is the problem. How it was me washing your dishes by hand while you praised Mark for showing up. How it was you telling me humility was important while you built a shrine to his football trophies. How it was me being the family ghost, the quietity support, the one you could rely on to be small. How it was all of you sitting in a room, deciding I didn't fit in with the happy mood. You struck my name from the list. Dad, that was the end of how it was. I looked at all of them, one by one. My weeping mother, my defeated father, my stunned brother, my calculating sister-in-law. You wanted a tidy Christmas, I said. This is how it is now. Tidy, final. Sarah was whispering urgently to Mark. My father looked like he had aged a decade. My mother was crying. Silent, humiliated tears. I looked at Evelyn. She nodded. We're having dinner now, I said. Evelyn reached out, her finger steady, and ended the call. The salon was perfectly silent. Even the string quartet was in a momentary pause. The waiter stepped forward, as if from the wings of a stage. He carried the wine bottle. Madame, Miss Martin, the Sancerre, for your coquille Saint-Jacques. Evelyn straightened her napkin in her lap. She smiled up at him. Thank you, young man. It looks lovely. The only sound in the room was the delicate, high-pitched clink of my silver fork against the Limoges china. We ate the main course in a profound, magnificent silence. The coquilles Saint-Jacques were perfect, delicate and seared, swimming in a light, buttery sauce, The Sancerre was cold as a stone. We did not speak. We let the string quartet fill the space. We let the family, 3,000 miles away, stew in the acidic silence of their own making. The phone, as I knew it would, lit up a final time. A third group video call. The last attempt. The plea bargain. I looked at Evelyn. She dabbed her lips with a napkin. "I suppose we should hear the closing arguments," she said. I accepted the call. The anger was gone. The shock had subsided. This was the raw, pleading face of defeat. My mother was at the forefront, her eyes red and swollen. My father stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, his face gray. "Leah, please." My mother's voice was a whisper. "Please, just stop. This isn't us. This isn't family. Can't you just fly home? We can talk about this. In person. Back in the States. We can fix this." "No, Mom," I said. My voice was not cold this time. It was just firm. Final. "I'm not flying back to talk. We're talking right here. Tonight. You wanted a family meeting to decide my status. Here we are. This is the meeting." From the background, I heard a child's cry. Sarah, my sister-in-law, who had been sitting in stone-faced silence, flinched. Her professional mask broke, and for a second, she just looked like a tired mother. "Mark," she said, her voice strained. I need to go. The kids, they're waiting up for Santa. They don't understand what's—" She looked at the phone, at me, her eyes a mix of fear and resentment. She stood up and walked out of the frame. "Go ahead, Sarah," I said, my voice softening for the first time. "This isn't about them. This has nothing to do with the children. They aren't at fault here. Go be with them." My brother looked at me, his expression unreadable. Was it gratitude or just confusion? He nodded, his face pale, and followed his wife, his screen winking out. Now it was just them, my parents and my aunt, hovering in the background like a guilty ghost. My father took a deep breath, visibly trying to muster the last of his patriarchal authority. "Okay, Leah, okay. We hear you. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake. We see that. So let's move forward. How about this New Year's Day? A big dinner. At our house. Just us. The real family. We'll start fresh." "I'm not making any promises, Dad," I said, setting down my fork. "You don't get to just say start fresh and erase the tape. Fresh isn't a word you say. It's a structure you have to build. You don't understand. You still think this is about my hurt feelings. This isn't about a mood. This is about a system. The system you built." "Then what?" my mother cried, her voice cracking. "What do you want from us? Leah, what do you want us to do?" "You want to fix this?" I asked. "You want to heal? Then it's not a dinner. It's a contract. A new one. Because the old one, the one where I'm the silent, convenient, background character, is broken." What contract?" my father asked, his voice wary. "3 conditions," I said, holding up my fingers, as if I were in a boardroom. "You meet them, and we can begin to talk about healing. First, the performances are over. No more parties for show. No more impressing the in-laws or curating a look. Any family gathering from now on is about the actual, flawed, real people in the room. Or it does not happen. You want to impress someone. Impress each other with basic decency. Second, a schedule. For Grandma." I looked at Evelyn, who was listening intently. She is not a social prop. She is not a burden to be dumped on me when it's convenient and excluded when it's awkward. Her care, her time, her company, it will be divided, in writing, on a shared calendar. You will all take a shift. You will all show up. No excuses. And third, I said, apologies. I don't want to hear the words, "I'm sorry." They are meaningless to me. They are just air. From now on, any apology to me, or to her, must be attached to a specific, measurable, positive action. You have 90 days to propose your first actions. I will be the sole judge of whether they are acceptable or just more performance." There was a heavy silence. My father just stared. Evelyn spoke up, her voice clear. "And I have a condition, too, for the new scholarship, the first one, the big one. It won't be named for me. It will be named for whomever in this family. You, David, you, Carol, even you, Mark, writes the 3 most genuine, insightful, and compassionate recommendation letters for the first group of applicants. We'll judge them blind. Your titles, your bank accounts, they are worthless. Only your words and your understanding will have value." As if summoned by the conversation, a man in a dark, perfectly tailored suit approached our table. He was not a waiter. He was followed by a woman carrying a leather attaché case. He bowed slightly. "Madame Delaney, Ms. Martin, I am Monsieur Dubois, from your counsel's office, and this is our notary. We have the documents you requested." He placed a thin sheaf of papers on the table, next to Evelyn's plate. As my parents watched, their faces frozen in disbelief. They're right there," my mother stammered. "This is an international legal matter." "Mother," I said, "it requires precision." Evelyn took a heavy gold pen from the lawyer. She signed the last page of the document, the one designating me as executive director of the Delaney Pathways Foundation. The lawyer and the notary countersigned, witnessing it. "It is done," the lawyer said in a low voice. At that exact moment, my secure phone, my work phone, rang. I excused myself and answered it. "Maya, you're on speaker." "Good evening. Leah, Merry Christmas." Maya's voice was crisp. "Just confirming. The U.S. Council has the wireframes. With the notarized Parisian witness statements you are scanning to me right now. The Foundation's corporate charter is ironclad. It will be filed and formalized with the state of Washington by 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. They can't touch it. They can't contest it. The forfeiture clause is, and I quote, brutally perfect. Congratulations, Director." I hung up and looked back at the screen. My father was shaking his head. "The Foundation, all that money, Leah, you'll control all of it. That apartment, the trust funds, the salary," my mother whispered, her mind finally grasping the scale of it. An executive director of a foundation that large. My God, Leah. I cut her off. "I am taking no salary," I said. "I have my own money. I am taking only the voting rights. The money stays with the foundation. It will be used for the work, for the girls who are building their own lives." This was the one thing they could not compute. The act had no selfish motive they could recognize. It broke their logic. But why?" my father asked, his voice small. "Because I am not buying respect, Dad," I said, leaning in. "I am just stopping myself from being rented." On the screen, my Aunt Carol, who had been silent this whole time, finally, completely, broke. It was not a quiet, dignified cry. It was a raw, ugly, painful sob. She pushed past my father, her face filling the camera. "Evelyn," she wailed. "Oh, God, Evelyn, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I knew it was wrong. I went along with it. I wanted to be part of the nice party. I didn't say anything. I'm so sorry." Evelyn looked at her, not with anger, but with a profound, weary practicality. "Stop crying, Carol. It's a waste of energy. You want to be sorry. Good. Use it. Starting tomorrow. I want you, and I want you, David, and I want you, Carol, my daughter, to call one of the other children in this family, not Mark's, one of your sister's kids, the cousins you ignore, and I want you to ask them one simple question. What do you need for your education? Not for sports, not for a new car, for their studies. That is your first action item. Now, stop crying." A high, clear bell chimed in the salon. The head waiter, who had been waiting for this exact cue, stepped forward. He was followed by another, carrying a large silver tray. "Madame, Ms. Martin," he said, his voice warm. "Your omelette norvégienne." He placed the large, domed, baked Alaska in the center of the table. He took a small, silver ladle, filled it with dark rum, and warmed it over a small blue flame. Then, with a flourish, he poured it over the dessert. There was a soft whoosh. A column of blue-gold flame erupted, spectacularly bright. It licked up toward the ceiling, illuminating the entire room. It lit up our faces, Evelyn's and mine, in a warm, dancing glow, and on the small phone screen, it reflected, tiny and brilliant, in the tear-streaked, horrified, and utterly defeated faces of our family. The blue-gold flames of the omelette norvégienne burned low, leaving a warm, caramelized meringue. The waiter, with practiced ease, began to serve the dessert. The phone on the table remained dark, the video call still active, a silent, open witness. My family was still there, trapped in their lodge, watching us. Monsieur Dubois, the lawyer, cleared his throat. He looked not at my family, but at the notary, and then at the small, official camera she had placed on the corner of the table. "Madame Delaney," he said, his voice formal, "for the record, we have the final document, the digital signature page for the successor trustee designation. Before we proceed, the notary requires a final confirmation from you, recorded live, that this action is being taken of your own free will, without duress or coercion. Is that correct?" Evelyn, who was admiring the dessert, looked up at him. She placed her hands flat on the table, her gaze as clear and steady as the lens of the camera. "No," she said. The lawyer froze. The notary's hand twitched. My mother, on the tiny screen, let out a sound, a gasp of hope. "Mom." Evelyn smiled, a thin, sharp smile. "No, Monsieur Dubois, this is not duress. This is liberation. It is the freest thing I have done in 20 years. The lawyer visibly relaxed, a small smile playing on his own lips. "Thank you, Madame. Please proceed." The notary slid a sleek, dark tablet across the mahogany. The screen glowed with the signature page, the line at the bottom waiting. "My child." My mother's voice was a broken whisper from the phone. "Leah, honey, please, don't do this to us. Don't take it all away. Just, please." It was the voice she used when I was a child, the one meant to convey ultimate, unbearable disappointment, the one that had always worked. I looked at her face, her weeping, pleading face. I looked at my father, who just looked broken, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. Then I looked at Evelyn. She had raised her hand, her old, frail hand, spotted with age, the knuckles swollen slightly with arthritis. It was trembling, not from fear, just from age. She was trying to aim her finger for the digital line. I reached out. I did not guide her. I did not push. I simply placed my warm, steady hand under hers. I supported her wrist. I gave her the strength that she had always given me. Together, her hand resting on mine. Her finger touched the glass. On the screen, in a clear digital script, her signature bloomed Evelyn Delaney. The screen flickered, processed the signature, and then refreshed. The large television above the fireplace, which was still mirroring our session, refreshed with it. The legal document vanished. In its place was a new, vibrant dashboard. A logo appeared, a clean, strong, sans serif font, Delaney Pathways, and beneath it, the new official designation in honor of Evelyn Delaney. My mother let out a low, keening wail. Before she could speak, I tapped the screen. The dashboard changed. A map of the United States appeared, with 3 states highlighted: Washington, Montana, Louisiana. "This is the Foundation's dashboard," I said, my voice narrating for the record. For them, for the lawyers. "This is the Q1 plan. The first round of scholarship applications opens in February. In partnership with the University of Washington, the first STEM Girls Center, a pilot program, will be established in Montana, funded by the proceeds from the ranch you didn't know I owned, and the second, in rural Louisiana, will be funded by, well, by me. My father finally spoke. His voice was hollow. But what about us? What about your family? Your brother's children, my grandchildren, is there nothing left for us? Evelyn leaned forward. She looked directly into the camera, directly at her son. Your family, David, she said, her voice quiet, but carrying the weight of a final judgment. Your family, if they want, can apply for a scholarship, just like everyone else. Your family, if they want, can walk through the exact same door of respect and hard work as every other girl in this country. There are no more private entrances. There are no more reserved seats. You are all, finally, equal. My mother's face was wet with tears. She looked at me, her eyes desperate, pleading for one last, personal connection. "Mom, I'm sorry," she whispered, the words so soft I could barely hear them. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Leah." I held her gaze. I did not soften. I did not look away. "Save those words, Mom," I said. "You have 90 days to turn them into actions. I'll be waiting for your proposal." My brother, Mark, who had returned to the room and was standing silently in the back, his face a mask of disbelief, stepped forward. He looked like he was about to say something, to argue, to defend, to plead. His mouth opened, and at that exact moment, from across the Place de la Concorde, a sound rolled through the air, so loud it seemed to vibrate the very glass of our windows. Bells, the deep, resonant, ancient bells of a Parisian church, ringing in the midnight mass, ringing in Christmas Day, as if cued by the bells. The string quartet, which had been silent, drew their bows and began to play. It was not a complex classical piece. It was O Holy Night, slow, solemn, and impossibly beautiful. My brother's words died in his throat. The argument was over. The verdict was in. A higher authority was speaking. The head waiter, as if he too were part of this choreography, moved silently to the tall French doors of our balcony. He turned the brass handles and pulled them open. A rush of cold, clean, Parisian air filled the salon, carrying with it the scent of winter and the distant, ethereal sound of a choir singing Minuet, Chrétiens. The city was celebrating. "Leah," Evelyn said, her voice soft. She was looking at the open doors. I stood up. I went to her chair. I gently helped her to her feet. The waiter stood aside, bowing. I took her arm, and I walked her, slowly, out onto the stone balcony. The city was spread out before us, a sea of golden light, and in the distance, from the direction of the Eiffel Tower, the first Christmas fireworks began to burst, silent and brilliant, against the black sky. We stood there, my grandmother and I, side by side, watching the colors explode. Behind us, in the warm, candle-lit room, the phone on the table was dark. The call had ended. The screen just showed a list of names, and next to each one, the small gray icon has left the meeting. On the large television above the fireplace, the dashboard was gone. It had been replaced by the final slide of the legal presentation, a single sentence, which had been the last clause in the new foundation's charter, glowing in the empty room. "No one shall be defined by their exclusion from a party." Evelyn, still watching the fireworks, raised the glass of champagne she had carried out. She held it up, not to me, but to the city, to the sky. She clinked it softly against my own. "You chose a life, Leah," she said, her voice full of a quiet, profound pride. "Not a role." I smiled, a real smile, a smile that reached my eyes for the first time in a decade. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, with her, and let the sound of the bells fill the silence. The last knot had been cut. The screen inside, unseen, still glowed, bright and final, confirmed. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know your thoughts. So please comment below and tell me where in the world you're listening from. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us your support by hitting that hype button so more people can find and hear this story.